It's time for the Movie Raid movie review, and tonight I'm going to talk about The Warriors, 1979, Walter Hill. And so, the story takes place with a gang called The Warriors being invited by a notorious gang called the Gramercy Riffs, which is the most famous gang and baddest gang in the city, led by Cyrus. So the Warriors, who go to this big meeting, unarmed, with all these other gangs, and they're all waiting to hear what Cyrus has to say. And Cyrus has to try to make a truce with all the gangs in the city, basically to make all the gangs in the city as a whole, a unification, try to take over the city itself. However, things go really wrong. One of these gangs brings a gun and fires at Cyrus and kills him. And so, not only did that make things bad, but it got even worse from there. The police, who are on the prowl of every gang in that city, makes a little ambush, a sting operation, and is basically surrounding the entire compound where the meeting has been taking place. And so, they interrupt the meeting after this happens, and they're already basically invading the area and trying to arrest every gang member that's in the area. And so the Warriors get actually accused by another member from another gang called the Rogues, and basically kept on accusing them, kept saying the Warriors did it, da-da-da. And so Cleon, who swears that he had nothing to do with it, and which he didn't, he gets accused of it anyway. And unfortunately, he gets killed by the Gramercy Riffs. And so the rest of the Warriors escape the area. Now, they have no idea what to do from there because they're having to go back to Coney Island. That's where their home territory is. So they have to go by subway. And that is definitely a challenge on its own. By foot, it's definitely a challenge because since this event happened, and now they got to make it back to the platform in the subway. Now they got to make it past these cops, which every cop in the city is looking for them, looking for every gang member in the city. However, every gang is also looking for the Warriors because every gang assumes that the Warriors killed Cyrus. So, as we progress in the story, we see that the Warriors basically are going to have to, quote, bot past every gang that they see. But they don't know the fact that that they even knew that they, had anything to do with Cyrus's death because they are innocent, but the rest of the gangs basically assume that. However, the Warriors don't even know anything about this information, that the gang members assume this. So we see plenty of action in the story. Plenty of action. And I love the fact that there's different gangs in this, and they all share different territories. And some of them share the same territory, like a conjoined territory. As we see with the Punks, we see the Lizzies, we see the Turnbull ACs, of course, Gramercy Riffs. The Orphans, obviously, the Baseball Furies, very unique gangs in my opinion, and really interesting. I'm always curious to find out, every gang member, where they came from and how they became too, and we kind of see that a little bit, or at least we get a glimpse of their lifestyle, and we kind of get a little bit of that at the meeting. If you were to pay attention at the big meeting in the story, you see quite a few different gangs in the entire area, different backgrounds, different ethnicities, and it's very interesting. But we see that there is plenty of action that the Warriors go through, not just a point A, point B, and a cheap climax. That's not the case at all. I love the fact that this is in actually 1979. Actual 1979. I love it. It's in the actual area, the era, and area actually, because it was filmed there. And I love the fact that, even though, here's a fun fact just so you know, that they actually hired actual gang members to protect the film crew and protect the equipment and whatnot. This was an era where real gangs were actually in this setting while they were filming this. So that makes it even better. Probably more problematic, but definitely heighten things up. So anyway, this is I think it's a unique gang type of film, because this is not a gang film in the kind of sense where, gang members have guns. The other gang members have guns too, or explosions, or anything like that. Now there is explosion in there, but no bombs and nothing where these gangs have advantages over each other, except the numbers of these gang members. And that's what I like about that, is that these gangs, fight with their bare fists and, chains, bats, knives, and so forth for the most part. And I just like the fact that the Warriors, who actually do lose a couple members of their party, and they still have to keep going. And, they end up losing one of their big leaguer, enforcer in the group. And I like the fact that even though they lose some key members, or the ones that are essential to the group, that they kind of have a little bit of a disadvantage, but they still have to keep going. They have to get back home. And I love it. I just love the fact that this is different storyline, and it's a little bit of a love story too, because Mercy, who is a part, well, at least was a part of the Orphans, and kind of just tagged along with the Warriors and go on this journey back home. So I like the fact that each character in the Warriors have their own identity. They're not just gang members, and Swan is the star of the whole thing. No, absolutely not. You got Swan, who is in second command by Cleon, who chose him to be the leader in case something happens. You got he's got the smarts, he's got the brains per se, and he's definitely got some moves too when he has to fight somebody. You got Ajax, who's this big brute guy. He can pretty much take on, I would imagine, definitely 4 people, 5 people if he could. He's a strong guy. And you got Rembrandt, who is the guy with the spray paint. He marks the territory. He makes sure that the Warriors are known from their mark. And you got Fox, who is kind of like the scout, kind of find information about other gangs and anything else that might be related, and a little bit of a moral support, and in some cases also try to ease things down if confliction happens between another gang member, let's say verbally, which we do see in the scene of the Orphans, for example. The Orphans, who have a big number, but obviously confliction is made, and things go definitely upside down from there, as you would see in the story. But I think this is a great movie. I just love the fact that it's just different. Everything isn't always about stereotype stuff. It's not always. And now another good thing about this movie is that it's not a star-studded movie. You don't see familiar faces. At least in that time, these actors were not known, not very well known. We see, you don't see these big names in this movie. As a matter of fact, you probably wouldn't really notice any of these actors per se, unless you were to watch, some of their later movies after this movie, let's say the mid-90s, or even maybe early 2000s or late 2000s, depending on whatever their work was. But the fact that I thought this was just a good movie on its own. It had plenty of fighting. The physicality between the gang members is just crazy to watch this. Like the Baseball Fury scene. These guys have baseball bats, and these are baseball players wearing face paint. I mean, that's pretty mimicking and pretty intimidating. If you were to live in the city and you saw these guys coming around the corner, imagine that, especially in 1979. I mean, that's pretty menacing looking. And you got all these other gangs who are also trying to prove something in their territory. You got the punks who wear overalls, and I would imagine they do some trashing, like vandalism and so forth in certain areas. I would imagine that. And you got the Lizzies who use their sexuality and manipulation to get the job done, per se. You've got like the Turnbull Lacies, a bunch of bald guys they look like bikers, but definitely tough guys, and they got a big number, and they use a bus, to track down their victims, per se. So we see that in the movie as well. And again, the suspense and the action is very action based in this movie, and that's a big key factor in this movie. The action is in your face. You see these warriors are just constantly on the move, constantly evading, constantly just basically constant all the time, and you really don't stop for a minute, really, per se, and see a moment to where you don't lose interest. My favorite scene definitely would be the punks versus the warriors scene, where they're in the bathroom. I mean, the battles between them two is just insane, man. The physicality, like getting thrown into a mirror, getting thrown into a wall, getting thrown into a bathroom stall, like it's just crazy. And I love how it's shot as well. The scene from that, how that was shot, I absolutely love how tight the shot was, and how it was choreographed. I mean, I thought it was just crazy of how it looked. Considering the size of that bathroom, I mean, it's just crazy how many people in one room is just battling out and just tearing up. But how it's shot and all these other scenes, very, some wide shots, some close shots. And now, granted, some of the lighting a little bit darker than what it should. It's definitely something that you'll probably ignore while watching these scenes. It's just kind of mesmerizing. The action itself, like the Fury scene versus the Warriors. I mean, the baseball bats, just clanking each other on the bats and trying to hit the tree, hitting trees and dodging it. It's pretty crazy. Definitely puts you in the moment. The locations is very interesting too. At that time era when it was shot, and as we see today, these places kind of, well, I wouldn't say not exist, but definitely a little bit different than what we envision from this kind of film. But I think it's a great film for a gang film. I think it'll stand time forever, really, in comparison to all these other gang type films that you would see today. Because today it's all about technology. It's all about star studs, A-listers, and it takes so much away from where the drama is, where the action is, where that core of where the story should be. And the Warriors definitely nail it, in my opinion. It's unique. It's different. It can be seen as a comic book type movie because, in a way, it was originally intended to be that. Or at least there's two versions of it. There's the regular version where you can just watch it as is, or watch the special edition where you can see it kind of a comic book. You'll see a panel in every other scene at each scene. If you were to get this special edition, you'll see what I'm talking about. But either way, I think it does a good job kind of telling the story based on where the Warriors are going. And that's pretty much the whole journey is getting home. And how they proceed that, they end up losing people. They end up having to just keep pushing forward. And I think that's really, just really cool about this movie. And I will definitely give this a 10 out of 10 on a ranking, because it's just something that you just kind of get into right there off the bat. It's like you feel for the Warriors. These guys are really no different than all the other gangs in this film. They're trying to make a name for themselves. They think they're the toughest, just like all these other gangs. But we see that in a way the story sees in the kind of light where these guys are, the good guys in some way, but they're trying to get home and face a final confliction with the other gang, the gang that accused of them killing Cyrus. But yeah, it's definitely a good movie, man. If you haven't seen this movie, you got to see this movie. Like I said, great cast. Like I said, I like the fact that these are kind of no-name actors, and I don't mean to just make that a disrespectful way. I mean that in a positive way. That I like the fact that we don't really recognize these actors, the potential of who they are and how they acted as these characters, and they all play these parts very well in this film. And it's really cool to see that some of these guys in some of these other films that you're going to recognize them in, but for what this film is as a whole, great movie, and I think you'll love the action into it. But yeah, that's something that you've got to check out if you haven't checked it out.